everyone. Depending on which clock you look at, we're either late or on time. So, welcome to the Upper Feather River Integrated Regional Water Management Program, Regional Water Management Group. And this is our meeting for the camera of February 26th. And we will start out with a roll call.
Sherry Troll.
Here.
Paul Rowan.
Here.
Terry Swafford.
Here.
Russell Lee.
Here.
Bill Nunes.
Here.
Jim Roberti.
Here.
Trina Cunningham. I believe she's sick today. Roger Diefendorf.
Here.
Jeffrey Greeney.
Here.
Joe Hoffman.
Here.
Carol Thornton. And Clinton Youngblood.
Okay, I think we have four. Additions and deletions from the agenda. We have an addendum that was announced in time that it doesn't have to be added as an urgency item. So I want to add that addendum. We'll take it up just before item 1 on the regular agenda. And that would be that change. Are there any other additions or deletions? Okay. This is a public comment opportunity. We encourage members of the public to address us on any issue under the jurisdiction of this group. And if it's an item that is on the agenda, if you'll hold your comment to that item and then raise your hand, I'll recognize you then. So if you have comment on anything other than an agendized item, now's the time to jump in. Okay, just going to move along fast. Announcements and reports.
Holly George requested that we announce a couple of meetings that are coming up. April 4th at the Sierra Valley Grange in Vinton. There's a meeting from 11:30 to 4 that will highlight water topics, and it's the RCDs. I don't know, some of you folks might be able to explain it a little bit better. And then on April 20th, there is the University Cooperative Extension is putting on a Google Earth and Mapping workshop from 11 to 4, and that's limited to 18 people, so you should get online and register for that early, and it's a $30 fee for that one.
Okay. Anyone else have any announcements or reports? Consent agenda. Item A on the consent agenda is to approve the meeting summary for the regular meeting held January 22nd. I think everybody got copies.
Absolutely.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Action agenda will be the addendum, and John, that's you.
Is this okay?
Hi, I'm John Sheehan. I used to have work. I'm retired now. But I'm still involved with the Fire Safe Council, still involved with Plymouth Corporation, and I'm a trustee at Feather River College. So I am vice chair of the Upper Forestry Group for this group. This is a project that's brought to us by the Forest Service, whereby the Fire Safe Council, Plymouth Fire Safe Council, would apply for funds to complete a major project up at Bucks Lake that's been going on now for about 10 years. The project is well over 1,200 acres, and this would accomplish the last 200 to 400 acres, depending upon what funding is made available. The display, the summary says 200 acres, but the actual acreage amount is 342 at this point. I'd like to explain a little bit quickly about what this project looks like on the ground by referring to the map. First, there's two purpley things on the map, and I'll explain what they are. The larger of the two purple polygons, or polygon areas, are projects that have been done previously by Pacific Gas and Electric around the lake. And those of you who have been up there have hopefully seen what a fine job it looks like in terms of making it fire safe. They really have helped right around the major roads. The Forest Service has done its part and has accomplished numerous acres and through that process has generated what income can be generated on this project. So we're down to, not the dregs, but that part of the project that doesn't generate any income, but is still critically important. And it's hand-thin, pile burn, and aspen release are the primary foci of the project. And they'll take place in the units that are shown here. And a particular note are the units that are right around Bucks Creek, which comes down from the right off of Bucks Summit. And also between Bucks Lake and Lower Bucks Lake on the west side of the lake. PG&E has already done a really good job of thinning in the area around the leasehold cabins right on the lake that are right at Haskins Cove there at the bottom of the map. And now it's time to do those Forest Service parcels that have that are above and around the cabins on the west side of the lake. So having lived through the point where we first identified this project as a significant goal of the Fire Safe Council in the Community Wildfire Protection Plan in 2005, along with 50 other community level projects. This is one that's proceeded pretty well over time, led by PG&E. The Forest Service has accomplished a lot of work. Now it's time to button it up and really try to make this area as fire safe as we can for the next 10 or 20 years until the next time we go in. That's all the presentation I had. If there's any questions or more detail, please ask me questions.
So what you're looking for from us is basically a letter of support.
A letter of support to go for Prop 1 funds, yes.
So we were just discussing who's going to write this letter, and being as how we've lost our computer ability for the time being, would you write the letter for us for my signature and get it to Randy so we can?
I can do that,
And
yeah.
that way it'll address specifically what you needed to
Right.
say for the grant.
It might not be me that writes the letter, but,
Well, isn't it due today?
Tuesday.
Tuesday, okay.
so, today, tomorrow, today and Monday. But this is not, this is not starting from scratch. This project's already been through the NEPA process, and Sierra Nevada Conservancy, who would be the grantor, is responsible for the CEQA process on this. There are no big issues that any of us know about, except the usual issues that are already defined pretty well in the NEPA work. So yes, I'll make sure that the short and sweet letter gets written for Randy's review and your signature.
The problem I have is Monday I'll be out. I'm not sure I'll have a computer. Could it be sent directly to Sherry?
Or I'll be over here Monday and Tuesday, so if you get it to Nancy, I can get her to put it,
Okay.
do something.
Get it to Nancy DeForno.
We've got two on the board for Tuesday morning, so I know Tuesday afternoon they're gonna send it down electronically.
So we have till sometime
Tuesday
Tuesday.
afternoon,
Yeah, I'm just saying I won't be here Monday, and with my computer problems, everything's encrypted. It won't, everything's probably
If you
locked.
just paid the $85 million prize, then you have enough.
We talked to IT, and they said that might not help.
And John, this is for implementation of the project, correct?
This is for implementation of these last pieces of the project, yeah.
The other thing I want to say is that the Plumas County Fire Safe Council did sign the MOU. They signed it a little late, but they are an MOU signature to this process. They don't have any projects. This is to support them.
Yeah, good, and we're very glad they did sign it.
Yes.
So I will make a motion to forward a letter in support of the completion of the project.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Thank you very much. It'll be fun to see this done too, by the way, when it does
it
get
will
done.
be. Like you say, it's not new. It's
Fun to
getting-
see anything done anymore, John.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Thank you, John.
Okay, that brings us to action agenda item 1, which is a project status update. So, I assume you're going to handle that one?
Yeah. We're still working through the MOU with Butte County. So we haven't made too much progress there. It's still being reviewed by county council. For budget and task update, we're tracking along at about 64% completed at this point. We've submitted 17 invoices and progress reports to DWR. I noticed that again, the budget summary didn't print properly, so I provided a copy here. Something in the PDF process is not working yet. For task 1, the stakeholder outreach, I just received a tribal engagement plan update from Sherry Norris and Trina Cunningham. I haven't gone through it yet, but I can bring that to you at our next meeting. And they made some changes to the stakeholder involvement plan as well. And I can bring that again at our next meeting. For climate change, the climate change consultants are working on adding in adaptation strategies for the RMS chapter, the Resource Management Strategies chapter. And they'll be having that completed probably mid-March, and then we'll send that chapter out for review. Project development process, we have a March 7th internal deadline as far as getting the projects, a list of what projects have all of their everything they need to get turned in, and we'll be bringing a list of those projects to you at your next meeting.
And is that moving along fairly well? Everybody's getting their stuff in?
For the most part, it is taking some hand-holding. The worker coordinators are doing a lot of work, input and pulling that together. So much gratitude goes out to them for all the work they're doing on that.
Good.
Chapter review process. There's a summary in your agenda packet, and we've released 4 chapters at this point. The impacts and benefits chapter is currently being reviewed. It was released on February 17th, and the deadline for comments will be March 18th. We're hoping to bring that to the management group at the next meeting. We have the 3 special studies going on. The forest water balance study, that's continuing to track along. That's Burkhart Foam is doing that. And he's also doing a well vulnerability study, and we have some initial work plans drafted on that, and that's starting to move along. The disadvantaged community assessment is being done by Sierra Institute, Jonathan Kusel, and he's provided a draft yesterday.
Yes.
And so we'll be looking at that, and we hope to bring that at the next management group meeting also. And that's basically an identification of disadvantaged communities in the region and recommendations on what DWR might be able to do to fine-tune their identification process.
Well, and based on the presentation we had at our last meeting, that designation becomes pretty important on some of the funds.
Very much, yes. And he is also, I did take a quick look at the draft he provided, and he's, Prop 1, which we'll get into in another item today, but Prop 1 has added a economically disadvantaged area category, and he's included those in his assessment also, so that will give us a step up there. That's all I have, unless there's some questions.
Any questions for the project update?
I know that some folks that have been concerned about some of the way that, I think you've heard some of the comments that on some of the chapters that have been, and they just ask questions more on a procedural basis and a process basis. And I think that the questions are, if there's comments on the way that it's written, and somebody says that you're saying something wrong, who changes that? Who's going to be the final way, and how are we going to, I'd just like to know how you perceive that process. If you made everybody's comments, we have about 5 different comments, let's say, on I don't know if that's the case. How are we going to put this together so we make sure that the comments get integrated into the process? I've probably asked the question 3 times because in my mind I'm trying to get to the right question.
Understood. So we're gonna go into that a little, was gonna discuss it in the chapters, items that we have.
Let me
but
tell, is that on agenda 6?
It
that
is agenda 5 and 6, item 5 and 6, but if you'd like to talk about it now.
Excuse me, I will wait.
Okay.
I have patience, it's on my side.
Okay,
Sorry.
no problem.
Love this creek. Okay, that brings us to item 2, stakeholder outreach updates. Item A is tribal outreach updates.
So Trina is sick today. I did receive some updates from Sherry Norris. So the tribal engagement plan, which is a living document, has been drafted and complete and approved through the tribal advisory committee, the TAC. They are working through their edits, their comments on the chapters still, although we have received them for the chapters that we have in the packet today. They are coordinating the disadvantaged communities, the Prop 1 packages that we'll be discussing in the next 2 items. So they're coordinating those and the recommendations from a tribal perspective. And they're continuing to work on their Step 2 project forms with their greenhouse gas emissions and climate change. And they'll have those completed for us next week by the deadline. So that was the update on that one.
And item B is work group updates.
So the project summaries, we'll have those for the next meeting, and we're continuing to work through those. The RMS chapter, Resource Management Strategies chapter, is with the climate change consultants. As I mentioned, they'll be getting those to us, and then we'll be sending it all out for review. So that's pretty much all I have for the stakeholder outreach.
Okay. Any questions on that? Comments? Item 3 is Prop 1, disadvantaged community involvement draft funding package, and that's what we touched on a few seconds ago.
Yeah. So this was what Katie Burdick had talked to us about at our last meeting. The package came out during that same day, actually during our meeting, and has changed somewhat from what she had been led to believe from DWR. I'll go through the schedule and the purpose of this round 1 funding opportunity first. The draft RFP was released on January 22nd. There was a workshop webinar held on the 22nd, so on Monday that Randy and I both listened in on. And through that, they've extended the comment period on the draft package to April 8th, and then they plan on releasing the final RFP in April 2016. This is round 1 of Prop 1 for disadvantaged community involvement funding. The purpose is to ensure the involvement of DACs, the economically disadvantaged areas or underrepresented communities in the region. What's not clear is if the Upper Feather River is eligible for that funding because we don't yet have an adopted plan. I have that question in to Debbie Spangler, our DWR representative, but haven't had a response yet.
So if I understand what you just said, they're going to release the final DAC involvement RFP in April.
Yes.
I assume toward the end of April.
Likely, yes.
But then the comment is 8th of April. That's
That
a
came from
window
the
like.
website. That is a very small window. I would guess that April 2016 bumps to May.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah. I'll just give a kind of a summary of the RFP as it stands now. As Katie mentioned before, there's 1.3 million allocated for the whole Mountain Counties funding region. I just wanted to point out that there are 10 IRWIM regions, either wholly or partially within our funding region. 5 of those are completely within the funding region, and 5 of them are partial. The question was asked at on the webinar, what happens for those IRWIMs that cross boundaries? And the answer was pretty much where the project is will determine where which funding region it applies to. The way that it's written is that DWR is asking for 1 application per funding region, which means that the IRWIM, the management groups will have to coordinate together, decide who is going to put forth an application and how that will look.
And in the application, there could be numerous projects from various IRWIMs within that.
Not a lot of
Correct.
money for the region.
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Right.
Right, but that's what I'm sitting here thinking, and back to what you said earlier, that the question is, do we even qualify if we don't have a completed plan? When you're looking at only 1.3 million for 10 IRWIMs, my bet would be no, we wouldn't qualify if the 10 have, depending on who has the plans. That'd be the first elimination of what you don't have a plan, so wait for another round.
So, question, is this money just for coordination?
This is just for disadvantaged community involvement. So it's not for plan implementation. Some of the options, I get into them in the next slide here, the eligible activities. The things that Katie talked about at the last meeting, as far as having a SWAT team type thing where you have an engineer, a project manager, a very core group. That is something that could still be put forward as an idea. If all of the IRWIMs kind of bought into that, it might be a really good thing that would still make sense with the funding and benefit all of the regions. So that's something that could be put forward.
Are we one of these 10 army ones?
Yes. Yeah.
We hope to.
Yes. So some of these, the eligible activities are technical assistance with the applications, and again, this is all geared towards disadvantaged communities. A needs assessment, project development activities, site assessments, engagement in IRWIM efforts, governance, assistance with governance structure, community outreach, education, facilitation, and enhancement of disadvantaged community aspects of IRWIM plans. And that's kind of more, that last one is geared more towards having a special study done within the region. I have a question by the needs assessment because in the presentation they gave on Monday, there was a little thing after it that said required, but it wasn't clear what that meant. So that's something that we need to follow up on. Does each region need to have a DAC needs assessment done?
I have a comment. Maybe not all those IRWIMs are going to qualify too, because a lot of them were done under Prop 84 and they haven't been updated on Prop 1. What is trying to do with us, because she's following the Prop 1 and the change in the guidelines, going a little bit beyond the initial where we thought we were going to go, is to try to make this one Prop 1 compliant too, to the extent we can.
Right.
It's a little bit beyond the scope of the contract with her, but she's doing it anyway.
Well, and I think that's to be congratulated that you're taking that look, because otherwise we end up finishing a plan that's already outdated.
The other thing that I picked up from that webinar is for the implementation projects, they're looking at a 50% match. Under Prop 84, it was 25%.
That's the brakes of the bus.
Yeah, I know, that's why I'm saying it. However, for disadvantaged communities, they could waive the whole match itself, is what I picked up. So we're not out of it. I was shocked at that 50%. Conversation with Leah Wills sitting behind you was, well, it's all geared towards the big guys anyway, and they're the ones that can afford to cough up the 50%. But because we have disadvantaged community, that may fall, just so you know. It didn't make me happy on that 50%. I went, no, that's great. Who's got that? Well, the big guys probably.
I have a random question.
And truly, kind of looking at this, a lot of this appears that it would apply to what we've been needing, which is the capacity building, more than anything else. As you said, not so much getting the projects out there and doing the project, but building the capacity for our applicants and project submitter people to actually be able to do a project. So it would be nice if we could qualify under this and get something in, because God knows we need the capacity building.
Do you have a random question? Do we know how many of these 10 IRWMs already have their plans?
All of them have a Prop 84 plan.
And they're amending it to comply with Prop 1?
And this wasn't made clear. This is kind of ties into the, do we need to have our plan adopted beforehand? None of the plans are compliant or up to the Prop 1 standards yet, which those guidelines haven't even been finalized yet.
Oh, okay.
they're also out in draft form right now.
Thanks.
Sure.
Can you tell us which rooms are in the funding area, as far as who we need to work with?
Yes. So in addition to us, there's the North Sacramento Valley, which is in partially the Butte County area. Yuba County, which is a really tiny part and pretty much uninhabited, I believe. Cabby, which is the big one, and that's wholly in. American River Basin, which is a partial. McCollum, Amador, Calaveras, which is all wholly in. Tuolumne, Stanislaus, and Yosemite, Mariposa are both all in the mountain counties. And then partial is Madera and Southern Sierra. The rumor through Katie is that Cabby would like to step forward and be the primary, the contact person, right, the lead. But I have just kind of items for discussion here. I guess some questions are, does the management group want to try to participate in this? And how would you like to go about coordinating with the management group, other management groups? Most regions, I understand, are assigning a representative to make that contact and start the coordination. I've talked to Randy about it a little bit, and that's something that he and I could do together if the management group wishes to go that route. And then a DAC assessment. You know, is that the route that the management group would like to take, or possibly develop a plan and include a needs assessment, project development assistance, and governance? Those are some thoughts on what that you guys might want to discuss as far as what to put forward if you want to.
Could you define the DAC assessment a little more? I think you had some words earlier today with me about it. Can you remember?
I can't remember. I think that really tied into the eligible activities and would be a more detailed assessment of the DAC's needs in the region. That's something that Katie Burdick had talked about at the last meeting, that we need to have a really good idea of what the region needs as far as DAC assistance and what we want to put forward before we start coordinating with the other management groups.
Well, it kind of seems to me that it's again like which comes first, the chicken or the egg, because we really don't know what our DAC status is until we get Jonathan's report, because we've had so many different criteria to establish what's a DAC that we almost need that information before we can see if it's enough of an impact to really make that a priority.
To warrant the effort.
So in the question of the DAC, I'm much more concerned about, as I said, capacity building for everybody. If we could somehow or another craft something that would go into that. But as far as participating in the larger group, I think we have to, if it needs to be batched together by the funding regions, because if we're not at that table, we're not at the table at all, is what I'm getting. So I think we have to participate. And would it be mostly consultants and staff that are doing that coordination, or is it committee members, or how is that, or does anybody know at this point how that coordination would be structured?
I know that Katie has been assigned to be representative from Yuba County, Irwin. I don't know about the other regions yet. This is all really new, you know, it just came out, so I think that people are still trying to figure out next steps.
Okay.
Given her knowledge base, is she limited to one?
I don't know that.
There's a really the Sierra Water Working Group. They're kind of veteran water bond money chaser people. So Cabby, Katie Burdick, and Elizabeth Mansfield. That whole crew that's what they do. They chase water bond money, and we're gonna be on the outside edge of that. Right? We're gonna be, I think we could be involved with their group, but the powerhouse. They've got the Sacramento water districts, and so the Cabby folks, they're the powerhouse money grabbers, and we'll get crumbs. So maybe you have to play ball with them, but that's my take on. Just haven't watched how that shakes out.
But if we don't, then we don't get even crumbs.
Yeah.
Well, this is DAC only, right?
Yeah, so that's where the advantage should come for.
Right.
Well,
But till we see what tax we actually have.
Well, I mean, we've got a lot more than they do, I think.
yeah, as it's currently sliced, almost the whole watershed, if you look at, you know, we've had the two original tools that DWR gave us to look at, we could look at by census communities or census block groups, and by block groups, the entire watershed was a DAC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by communities, it sorts out, you know, there's a few that fall out of that. But I think it's,
Some of the communities, there's no data, so we can't drill
Right.
down to some of them.
but for the most part,
Jonathan's report too, and they did some extensive research.
When will we be seeing that?
At the next meeting. There are some, I mean, there's some clear DAC communities.
Yeah.
I mean,
Majority of the watershed,
right.
I'm sure.
So when would we need to make the decisions on the questions that you pose for discussion?
Well, I think as far as coordinating, I think the sooner we reach out to the other management groups, the better, just to get in, you know, talking about who's taking the lead and at least express our interest in being involved in it. Again, depending on what Debbie comes back with as far as whether we're even eligible. The other, I think the other things, you know, as I was looking for the timeline. As far as, you know, identifying our DACs and what we would like to put forward, I would think in the next, maybe at the next meeting, we could discuss that again and figure out if, you know, if we're going for it, what we'd like to put forward as far as a proposal.
Yeah, but in the meantime, you need to coordinate and make sure that
Right.
we're even gonna be accepted.
Yeah.
So,
Actually, our next meeting is in April, looking at that schedule, that like,
right,
says we're in deep trouble with that.
yeah.
Well, I would make a motion to have staff move forward with
Ahead of time.
determining whether it is plausible and, between now and the next meeting.
Exploring.
You report back to us.
Do I
And
hear a
perhaps have
second?
a meeting in advance of our calendar.
Is that a second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Uh,
Opposed? Thank you. March 4th, staff. And I don't see that we really don't have a choice anyway, because the strength is in the numbers.
Yeah, and if we can be accepted, then that's what we need to be able to do.
Exactly. Okay, so that was item 3. Item 4, Prop 1 changes to integrated regional water management guidelines. You kind of talked about that a little bit.
We have, so the grant agreement that we are working under and the standard that we are working towards is under the Proposition 84 standards. And the new Proposition 1 guidelines have been released in draft form. There are some new things that have come up that they're wanting to see in order to be eligible for Prop 1 funding. The plans that have already been adopted under Prop 84, there is a planning grant available through Prop 1 to meet the new standards. However, because we have an open Prop 84 planning grant, we're not eligible for that, any additional funding at this time under Prop 1. So this kind of gives a summary of the new standards. I've pulled that out. They want to see a expanded discussion on these in compliance with the AB 1249. So it's some new water quality constituent requirements that they are trying to meet. And that includes arsenic, nitrates, percolate, hexavalent chromium. And we're talking with Plymouth County Environmental Health
Jerry Syke, we met with him this morning.
to kind of get an idea of which of these are even of concern in the region. There are some beefed up climate change requirements. They would like to see them worked into the objectives and also discussions scattered through a number of the chapters. I'm going to get a clearer idea of what those are and get them to our climate change folks and see what it will take to meet those new standards. And then I'll have a better idea as far as budget from them. They've added the economically disadvantaged area category, which is 85%. So it's a little bit above the standard disadvantaged community of 80% of the median household income. They would like some discussion on environmental justice, especially in the impacts and benefits chapter, which is currently out for review, so we'll have to look at that and see if we've covered it enough. We did touch on it, but we'll have to make sure. And there's some revised language for statewide priorities.
Could you explain environmental justice one just a little bit more?
Oh, boy.
It,
Where's Jonathan Kusel?
yeah, it's, if I were to take a step back to college, how they described it was, if there's a brownfield, if there's a, a dirty, kind of a pollution type business that's coming into an area, they would place it in a community or a neighborhood of disadvantaged folks, like poorer areas of large cities. And so it would, because they don't have the voting power to say no type of thing. So for environmental justice, that's since expanded, and I just want to make sure that in this case, the water quality in disadvantaged communities is up to snuff and that it's not being ignored.
Basically, so you can't put the kind of project she just described that would cause environmental impacts within a disadvantaged area simply because they're disadvantaged without mitigating those impacts.
Leah, can you add anything?
I think that pretty well is what it's always been. It started back in the 50s, but now the push is to not create more impacts, but actually go back to some of these old brownfields, like abandoned mills are a good example, sawmills.
And rehab them.
They rehab them and
Redevelop.
turn them into economic opportunities for disadvantaged communities. So, one example that the travel community came up with was the whole James Lee site down in the canyon.
Right.
That's a brownfield site that has tremendous potential for a really disadvantaged community if it was cleaned up. That's an example of something we probably have here that's an IRWM project, for example.
Brownfield, is that a person or is
No,
that?
No, it's-
brownfield and greenfield, and it's kind of ironic that
It's
they finally
for-
figured out it's called recycling, which everybody's been screaming about forever, but they cast the land aside.
It's polluted land. Generally, there's a lot of it in inner cities.
Ruining the environment. That's the classes I took.
The brownfields has already been developed at one point, may have nasties on it. Greenfields are, going out.
Actually,
Tearing out an orchard and starting all over again. The easiest thing to do.
Actually, that's even incorrect, because brownfield is effectively any area that has blight. So I could drive through East Quincy, West Quincy, Chester, and declare lots of things brownfield on the premise that has blight.
It's mainly
It's
pollution.
not pure chemical or contamination.
But in this program, that's probably what they're looking for, so.
I think they're looking for both.
Sorry to get that one.
That's okay.
So we have one project that is already in our suite of projects that would address some of this.
Interesting.
I can think of a number of areas where that would come into play.
Okay, so as far as the statewide priorities, they did use different language, but as far as I can tell, they're very similar to the previous priorities. They've also required that the resource management strategies identified in the California Water Plan 2013 update be addressed, which are different than the previous Prop 84 required just 2009. Luckily, we are addressing those already, so that's not a hardship to deal with. They've also required the inclusion of any stormwater resource plans that are in the region. Which, as far as I know, we don't have any. So, again, the existing IRWIN plans in other regions will have to be updated to meet these new standards in order to be eligible. This region is not eligible for the planning grant that's currently being released under Prop 1. So I wanted to bring this to your attention as it just came up, and then let you know that we are trying to incorporate these as much as we can. I'll have to get back to you on the climate change portion of that and what impact that might have on the budget, and if we can just absorb that in that. And I'm sorry, Lorena, I didn't see you earlier. If you have any updates on any of these, I know that Sherry had sent some information.
Oh, the one thing Sherry said that she'd like to work with staff on, since she's working on recommendations already on the disadvantaged community and on the top one. That she'd work with staff on that.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, any questions, further questions, after what happened to Russell? If anybody else has the guts to ask anything.
Shut me up for the whole rest of the meeting.
Oh, I doubt that.
Not likely, not likely.
We'll keep that.
That'll be the day.
I can't keep that, but you're right, that was silly. I rescind that.
Do we take a break?
If there's nothing else, we'll move on to item 5, which is draft governance, stakeholder involvement, coordination chapter.
Great. So this is the first chapter that we're bringing, well, I'm sorry, the climate change chapter already came to the management group. This is the next chapter. This was, I'm going to give an overview of the chapter development process for Russell's benefit here.
Is that preemptive?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is. I even forgot what I asked, that was so long ago, so.
So the
You got a
process.
free shot at me.
The process that we go through in development of these chapters is they're drafted by staff, and we use, in this case, we use the Irwin MOU, and for information in that, we use the stakeholder involvement plan, the tribal engagement plan, and then information gathered from various management group meetings. Once the chapter is drafted, we send it to the work group coordinators, who do a review because they have the best knowledge of the work groups, what's been discussed at the work group level. So they do an initial review, and then we work through the comments on those, change the chapter as needed, and then we release it to the work groups and the stakeholders for review and post it on the website. And then it goes through the 30-day review period. And we bring the comments in, and we go through them. Randy and I go through the comments one by one.
Some of them don't get in. They're just not really relevant, some of the comments we've had. It's like, no. But that doesn't mean that the commenter can't come back to you in this group and make those comments again. But in that review that Uma and I go through, each one is looked at and we discuss them very carefully. And other language issues that may come up.
Well,
Between the two of us, we make a decision on how that. And I'm basically the one that okays the release.
And in some cases, the issue or the comment isn't addressed in that chapter because it's being addressed in a different chapter.
Yeah, I mean, sure, there's a bunch of criteria that you use to
Right.
decide if that's appropriate or not.
Well,
Accuracy might be one.
Well, I'm going to use one. I don't think the intent of this process is to dwell deeply into water rights issues. We don't manage the water masters, nor are we going to look at each individual water rights, surface water rights, and how they're handled. We have some general language in there about them. Some people would like to see more detail on that. At this point, we haven't gone into that level of detail. So those comments to include all this information on the decrees and everything that go into the plan, we're not including that, basically. Now, that's a decision that I made, but I've also conferred with both the chair and the vice chair on that particular issue, about how deep we want to go into it. We're not going to provide a map of everybody's diversions and where the water goes. We're not going to do that.
Although in the grant process, it's also confrontational, which is not terribly beneficial what you're asking for.
Yeah, and it doesn't,
Well, and it really
those
isn't.
act independently of what this group is doing
That's it.
anyway.
It's not under our
unrelated.
jurisdiction.
Yeah, that's the point, and each individual project is gonna have to go through CEQA,
Yeah.
where those things
Yeah.
should be addressed.
That's what it should.
So that's one example of comments that don't get out between me and them,
Yeah.
that I don't release.
And in that instance, what we did is we provided a brief summary paragraph about the decrees, recognizing that they were there.
If they exist within the region,
Yeah.
and they will be considered in any project as well.
I think the concern is, which I think that you're, as part of your criteria is, that we're not going too far trying to get the money by saying something that we're gonna contradict at some later date. And I'm sure that that's part of your evaluation process, that we're not gonna promise something that we can't do.
especially on that one. I mean, it's really beyond the
Yeah,
need of this
the
process.
scope of it.
Yeah, but we did get some comments regarding that, so we should go more into it.
That's a big issue.
And
I know one grower in the valley that just pulled they're pulling 10,000 acres of almonds this year. One grower. Producing almonds.
I'd like to get the revenue up to 10,000 acres.
I'd like to see 10,000 acres standing in the middle.
Well, and I think it's just important in anything,
Because
any
why people wanna
process like
Water.
this, that we recognize what's in our jurisdiction and what
Consumed
isn't.
their life.
And in this case, that would be addressed in projects, but for this group, we do not have the extra.
you don't manage water
No,
rights.
nor do we wish to.
No, I would totally
Believe
agree.
me.
And I would just
Unless you want
add on to
10%.
that, so this is the first draft that is out, and then there will also be an administrative draft, and there will be a public review draft, so people will have a chance to comment again.
Adequate opportunities to.
Yeah, so if they feel
You
that
get
we
away and
haven't,
balance it at the end.
so if we haven't addressed it, if they don't feel that we've addressed it adequately, their comments, then they can do it again, and it can be discussed again with the management.
Thank you.
It's a little touchy issue.
Well, I think we just need to, people come up with concerns, we need to understand the process, and we just explain it. It's just not one person writing it, here it is. There's a process, and you can be diligent as far as you want to be. If somebody wants to comment, continue to comment on the same spot. It might never ever change, but who knows? At least there's a process.
And in the end, it's your group that makes the decision on whether those comments should be tweaked in or not. We're trying to be comprehensive and realistic. And balanced. I guess I'd use the word balanced. Not letting language go too far or not enough. And that is a little bit of wordsmithing involved in that.
It's good to know your audience.
Yes.
So for this chapter, it was released on October 8th with the comment deadline of November 11th. We didn't receive any comments on the governance chapter. And I'm just going to keep these presentations really brief and just hope that we can dig into a discussion of the chapter or any changes or questions that you have. So I just wanted to go through the content that's required by the guidelines, and then we can talk about the chapter itself. So the content that's required under the Prop 84 guidelines is the name and description of the management group, the plan adoptees, which we'll have to add in at the end in this case, a description of the Irwin governance structure and how it addresses these bulleted items here. So the public outreach and involvement, the effective decision-making process that's undertaken and agreed to, the access and participation opportunities for everyone in the region, the effective communication, and that's both internal to the region and external with a neighboring Irwins. The long-term implementation of the plan I have held here because we are going to have a separate chapter called Plan Performance and Monitoring, and we've included the implementation in that chapter, which will be coming up. Also included coordination and the collaborative process to establish the plan objectives. And then again on this the last one, the process for future changes to the plan, we've included that in the Plan Performance and Monitoring chapter, which is coming up. So that's the content that's required, and I would be happy to hear the feedback on the chapter, if there's any comments, questions.
Anybody comment, question on the chapter?
Good job.
I personally think that the chapter is very well done, and that's probably why you didn't receive a whole lot of comments. So at this point, do you need an approval of the chapter from us, or?
I don't think so, because again, this will go into the draft plan, so I just wanted to collect any comments or feedback from you so we can make any changes before it gets to that point.
So this is like speak now.
This
or
hasn't
forever.
gone to the groups yet, and after today, it'll go to the groups.
No, it has been to the
Oh, it has been.
This is the first one, yeah.
and all the comments have been incorporated.
I got you,
Well, we didn't get any,
Okay,
but that's
okay.
the process.
Other than the water issue that was discussed with us and
And that's in the original description.
And that's in the next one.
It was a good job.
Okay, it sounds to me like continue. Great, nobody's objecting to anything. Okay, so that takes us to item 6, which is the draft region description chapter.
So this again, I'm not gonna go through the whole process again. I am gonna say that the background information that we used was, we started with the 2005 Irwin Plan and built from there. We incorporated the 2009 Regional Acceptance Process application, which is what established the Irwin region as the representative region. And then the other background information we pulled from was the call for studies, the documents we received from that, which was done at the beginning of this process. And those documents are included in the document library, which is on the website that can be accessed. So again, this has been reviewed by the coordinators, and comments were incorporated, and it has been reviewed by the stakeholders and the work groups, and those comments have been gone through and addressed as appropriate. So it was released on December 7th, and comments were due January 11th. We received 14 sets of comments, and Randy and I have gone through those and incorporated them as we felt was appropriate in this version that's in the packet. The content that we're required to discuss in there is the watersheds and water systems within the region, the internal boundaries of the Irwin region, the water supply and demand, the water quality and any issues, and the water quality section we may have to beef up with those new requirements from Prop 1. And again, we're working on that with environmental health, and we'll need to just talk about it with Sierra County as well. We need to include a discussion of the social and cultural makeup of the regional community, the major water-related objectives and conflicts within the region. We have pulled the conflicts part out, and we are going to discuss that in the water issues chapter, which is currently going through the work group coordinator review right now. The explanation of the regional Irwin boundary, and then a discussion of the neighboring and overlapping Irwins.
Did you think the comments that you received were justified and warranted, and most of them were pretty good?
Most of them were pretty good.
Just stuff that you might have missed or was inaccurate?
Tuning in the information, getting names right.
Yeah, that's what
Mike
I'm.
Moscas
Yeah.
did some comments.
Yeah.
That helped. I mean, yeah, most of them, not, and, one commenter wanted to do the water rights, but some of those comments got included, but not the water rights, as they wanted.
Yeah.
Um,
Joe, would this be kind of something you'd look at too and see?
I did.
And you were pretty happy with it?
Yeah, I did, I reviewed it, I didn't,
I don't want to put you in the
read
spot.
every word of
I
it.
didn't want to put you in the spot.
sorry.
But you
got me at the wrong time
But I
too.
did. You got that cookie? Damn.
Yeah, gee.
No, I gave it a pretty good review, I could have spent more time, I would have liked to, but I thought it looked good, I thought there was a lot of useful information, I made a couple comments.
Thanks. It's still evolving as well, so.
It is. I do want to point out that the work groups and the stakeholders did not get a chance to review the maps. Zeke created those in the last couple of weeks. And we did get them into the packet for your review today, but any comments on any of that would be very much appreciated.
On the maps, you mean?
All of it,
radio.
but yes, the maps.
Oh, yeah, the whole document.
We have one error that has been pointed out today, which is, the more comments we can get, the better this document will be, so.
Lorraine?
TAC had already provided our changes, but Trina's still working on a paragraph on the traditional fish species and habitat. And she wanted to know if that would be a standalone, or would it go under the fisheries, or?
I think it's up to the TAC how they would like to see that. We're open to either way. We can incorporate it into the fisheries discussion. If it's more general, if it's specific to Native American culture, we could certainly put it on its own.
Or both.
Or both.
Okay, yeah. She said she'd get that in this next week, so.
Great, thank you.
So I guess, any comments you have, please send to us.
Yes, and
What do you do? Do we
first
send it
time
by
I've seen
mail?
the map, so I'll be going
Just
over
email
those.
it.
They're pretty impressive.
Yeah, mail it to me.
Thank you.
I got my own
Postal
computer.
Should
service.
say it's a public meeting.
Actually, I have access by email. I don't have access to anything else.
Exact same. boundaries for us.
Paves the ramp.
Yeah, it should be.
Careful
I mean,
with
I've got
sites.
the maps and changed it, but I think it's the same, don't you think? It's Upper Feather, yeah. Just for the Upper Feather River Watershed Group, we want to see if this is the same map that we're using.
That would
as
be
our-
good if it was.
Yeah, well, I don't want to embarrass myself any more than I do just by showing up, but making sure that it's the same map, that I'll look at it. I think it is, I think it is.
Good.
So as far
Boy, it
as,
certainly would be nice though if there was a delineation, or maybe I'm not seeing it, for the county lines.
It's in there.
Yeah, it should be on
I
most
have
of them.
dark glasses on, I've got my clear glasses, so I can't see it.
It follows the watershed boundary pretty closely in a lot of the watershed, so
Except for the part down at the
Sierra.
bottom. Well, and
Well,
then
I can see Butte County easy enough.
yeah, Tehama County is coincident with the watershed boundary.
One thing is that I see that you have the Sierraville PUD listed. Or is it only the participating groups that are listed, or is it?
No, we don't have complete mapping, so that's one thing we gotta work with the county and
Yeah,
should work.
because you're missing Calpine and Royal Capone.
Okay, who should I talk to at Sierra County about that?
Probably. Well, I'll get with you.
Okay.
Do you have a GIS in Sierra County? Good, you can still layers.
Yeah, we noticed we're also missing the Indian Valley Community Services District layer. So, and I think, I don't know if we got Gold Mountain or Grizzly, but we know there's a few missing there in the
And
district.
Sierra Brooks as well, you've got the subdivision, there's a water district there too,
Yeah.
belongs to the county.
the Grizzly Lake Resort is now a CSD, Grizzly Lake CSD.
So as we have a chance to pour over the map more closely, do you want us just to email our comments to you?
That would be great, and if you could all come to me, that would be great, and then I can get them to Zeke and distribute them that way.
Okay.
And if, we're prepared to take any comments from the management group today too. So as far as next steps, I have, receiving comments from the management group and some direction. And then we would revise the chapter accordingly, and then incorporate it into the public draft, and then we would go through that process.
Like in the sub-watershed discussion, it talks generally in the last sentence about a DWR ranking for the basin.
Yes.
What is that, what are they ranking? What are the, and I'm sure you describe it in here somewhere probably, but what kind of?
We may not have, it's their ranking per their bulletin 118 as far as, the sustainability vulnerability, I believe.
It's the water plant, or the bulletin 118 ranks groundwater basins.
We're having that discussion on Monday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately I can't be there, I wanted to, because I understand that the Sierra Valley Groundwater District, which was mentioned specifically in the legislation, has been identified as a medium priority basin.
We're gonna challenge that.
And we're gonna challenge that. All the other groundwater basins in the region were not, they were low. Meaning, it's only that one affects the watershed. It has to do with sustainable groundwater management.
So you can't be there Monday?
Huh?
You can't be there Monday?
No. Dentist.
Yeah, I just noticed a lot of them were very low and now I'm keying in its groundwater basin. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, yeah, so you go up some of these remote areas, groundwater priority is pretty low.
I could add a description about the 118, bulletin 118 notes, that would make it
That
clearer.
would,
Yeah.
I wanted to just kind of tag on that there will be 2 public meetings at the draft plan stage. So the draft plan will be released for public review and comment, and then we have 2 meetings, I'm guessing, like we did before in various areas in Chester and
When it's the complete
Port
document.
Harbor. When it's a complete document,
yeah.
and that will be a
That'd be
final opportunity for
Yeah,
folks
yeah,
to
yeah.
comment.
And what general time frame would you be thinking of holding those meetings?
So if we're hoping to adopt the plan at the end of May, early June, they would be in the April timeframe.
That's what I'm asking, because I'm seeing
we're getting there.
we're getting tight here.
I will say that we have about 4 chapters that are going through review, the internal internal review process, and they will be released, right after each other, so.
We're getting close.
We're gonna post. Most of the chapters are at least partially drafted, almost all of them.
I guess one of my concerns is if our next meeting is, we're targeting, say, April 1st. And we're supposed to have all this stuff done.
Realistically, we'll probably have the draft ready in May, and have to go through the process from there.
Because it takes a while just to
Yes.
set up public meetings and get the word out,
I already know that
try
I
to
have
motivate
to
people.
modify the contract with DWR. We're shifting some money that was initially gonna go to staff for Jerry Shaw to do some work that Burkhart Braun is doing as a consultant. I need to shift that money, working with Debbie, we've already discussed it. And trying to extend maybe this whole process deadline with the agreement, maybe a couple of months to give us some pad in there if we get tight at the end.
You getting any reception?
I just have to work with Debbie to do it at this point. Shouldn't be, and she said it's easier than modifying Prop 50.
I was just gonna.
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
And truthfully, I think she had made it fairly clear early on that there weren't gonna be a lot of extensions.
Yeah. So she didn't think there would be a problem with it if we extended it a couple of months.
Well, hopefully the product has been impressive enough that she will.
We think we
Yeah.
don't need it, but we can wrap it up.
Well, that would be my advice, is let's keep pressing to
We're
meet
gonna
the
keep
correct
pressing.
deadline. And hopefully we won't need it.
So maybe the only one I need to do is that shifting of money. It should be, and I have to do that with Plymouth County, the control district, because they're the ones that have the grant agreement with DWR. So I'll have to agendize that once I get it figured out with Debbie.
So this is like, the plan has to be signed by everyone, or it just has to be adopted by the Regional Water Management?
I asked Debbie that question, and her response was no billing after the contract completion date. But whenever the plan is adopted, she's like, that is not so much the issue, it's just there's no billing allowed to the grant after that
The
date.
deadline.
Right.
Which may lead
Which
to
means we better have our act together.
certainly trying.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Anything else?
I don't have anything else unless there's comments that people want to talk about the chapter now.
Nope, everybody's happy.
Actually looks great.
Everybody's good. Man, you guys are easy today.
Just reflects the completeness.
That's true.
Where are you on your timeline that you had envisioned?
We're probably 2 months farther along than I had hoped at this point. The chapters are getting backed up. It's a process, to draft the chapter and to get them out to the coordinators for review. The coordinators have been great. They turn the review around in, 3 to 5 days, but then a 30-day comment period, and it's just it's a process.
One thing I will say is, from the time period when the flood control district entered into the agreement, it took us a couple of months to get a contractor on board. So we sort of lost, I think, 2 months in that process, somewhere around there. So that's why I'm saying 2 more months is reasonable for the billing, maybe not the process. But we did lose that time. Sherry, remember that?
Oh, believe me, I do.
In getting a Loomis firm on board. So,
Well, that's a kind of interesting approach, because in essence, you made a comment, maybe that's all you should talk about, but I would like the board to consider, it's the billing, it's not so much the product. So what we can say is that we might need staff help just to make sure that we can approve it 2 weeks, 3.5 weeks after the fact. And that seems, and I understand your strategy, and I like it. I understand, well, let's go for it, let's get it in on time. But I think we can divorce both those things, so we're gonna get it in on time.
When they accept a final invoice without a final product, that's the question.
That's a good point. Well,
And
if
my bet
I'm
would
listening to
be-
what you're saying,
That's, and in all other aspects of county government, you have to give them something before they give you.
Yeah.
Is
That's
that-
it.
is that
And
correct?
usually there's a lag time after.
see, you know what he's saying, in other words,
Mhm.
the,
Well, there's no, yeah, I mean, I have to get it.
She does know, yeah, that's why she's pushing to get done.
Yes,
Well,
I
and-
am pushing hard to get it
And
done.
that's why I'm saying let's try to stick with that, because my experience with government in particular is whatever the date is, it will expand
It's
to
never
fill
a
the
real
void.
date, yeah.
So,
I would also point out that there's no, we have a 10% retention overall on this grant, which won't be released until the plan is finished and then accepted by DWR.
So, one of the things that we're experiencing with the Prop 50 grant is certain portions are closing out. Wow, I don't know how many times I signed a couple of invoices because when it gets into DWR, then it gets tweaked again.
right,
And we still haven't got those closeouts released. It's just, and it's not Debbie so much as, is people above her, and then, I think what Debbie's looking at is making sure that if we do get audited on that grant, we'll survive it, so she's being very thorough about the closeouts, but the closing out of the grant could be an interesting process with DWR.
that's not as simple as sending an invoice and the money comes, that's for sure.
One other thing I'd like to bring up is if we try to meet these Prop 1 guidelines, that's going to take a little more extra work. Debbie might be willing to extend the contract
Yeah,
to
just for that
accommodate
basis,
that.
And like I said, I think if that's what we're doing, that takes the extra time,
Then
that's a worthy
There's a
cost.
reasonable request,
Yeah.
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 So I don't have a problem with that. Well, what we have, not that I like to drag meetings out, but while we have a few minutes and we have people here in the audience who have been participating in this process, I kind of, as chair of this group, would be interested in hearing from all of you, how you feel about the process. Is it working for you, or you feel it's fruitful? You're the ones on the ground doing most of the work. So, anybody want to be brave and say what they think?
Besides me.
Besides Russell?
And do so an
I wish
example of
we
what
had-
happens
I
when
wish
you
we
do.
had
It's a
to
friendly
shut it down
amendment to
so
that.
bad
Yeah.
before I ask the question, right?
I would just say that it's been a real experience for me, spreading the news about what we're doing. There's a lot of people out there that went, what? Oh my God, I didn't know you guys were doing that. I'm only on the eastern end of the county, but now I'm talking to people in the northern end, and they didn't get into this process because they weren't aware of what it was. So it's one of those things where through the Plymouth County Special Districts Association, which I talk about these meetings when we have our meetings, people are really interested to see where this goes and how this group, if we meet in the future, they'll know it's important to be here. And so I think the word's getting out of what we're doing, and I've gotten some real positive comments about it.
Good. Yeah, I would hope that this isn't one of those processes that when the grant ends and the invoices are paid, that it disappears. And that's what I hate about grants, because that's usually what happens. And I think what we're all trying to put together here is so important for us that it needs to continue
Yeah,
long term, so.
And that's kind of the point that I'm making with people is that, yeah, the first go around, the municipal group was kind of ignored a little bit, but by spreading the word and telling them that this group will continue to try to help us to apply for programs like this to get these things done. We've been ignorant in that way for too many years, and we can't continue. So I would suggest that this group plans to go forward even when the grant runs out, because people need to be aware of what is possible, but also is participate in it, and it gets done.
Well, so many times you have funding that becomes available that it needs to be, quote, shovel-ready, and we've never been able to qualify for those things because we've never had the process to get us to that point, so we had projects. So
The
I think
Trenton
that's-
Tahoe, they just came out for their second round of propositions for projects because they've fully funded all of their first round, but they're moving on to the second round.
That's only something we wish to aspire to.
Yeah, we just want to get to the first round.
Anybody else?
I'd just like to compliment the staff. I'm a professional proposal writer by trade, so I read way too many proposals every day. And the products that these folks have put out that I've reviewed, that Una sent, have been very well done. I was pleasant. I'm used to reading stuff that makes my eyeballs cage back in my head.
Yeah.
And these were very nicely done.
Thank you for that comment. I'm sure Uma appreciates it because and Randy too, there's been a lot of work.
I'm one of the ones that found out by accident. It's been very helpful in getting our project together in some place where it's just been assistance wherever I needed it, and the potential to get some assistance with our project. Our board is thrilled.
Good.
I think the committee coordinators have done a great job shepherding their groups, their individual groups. Be able to get the draft chapters out and back in a timely manner and answer all the side questions and be working at getting all of the projects shepherded along that they've been working on. It's been a big job for them.
I would have to agree. It's been amazing to me what you guys have been able to accomplish.
Ideally,
with
you
your
establish
groups.
communication, which people just
Yes.
didn't have.
Yes.
Well, and that was one of the things I talked about before we even got started, that we will all get to know each other's issues a lot better than we did before. And I think we've accomplished some of that.
I think so. Well, this is really good feedback for me because so many times you have 85,000 meetings that you're going to and you begin to think, am I really accomplishing anything with all of this? So it's nice to hear that people feel like it's a worthwhile effort. So thank you for those comments. And the last item on the agenda, I can't believe we're getting this. The last item on the agenda is the next meeting, and we have tentatively scheduled it for sometime in March. I think it's the 19th.
18th.
But Uma is proposing that maybe she would like to push that date
I'm
further away.
suggesting April 1st, and the reason for that is to be able to add on the draft impacts and benefits chapter. The comment deadline is March 18th, and if I had a week to incorporate the comments, then we could present it at the next meeting. Make it a more full meeting.
Anybody have a problem with meeting on April Fool's Day?
Yeah, that's the only point I was gonna make.
The only parameter is no tricks.
Russell?
I'll be on my best behavior.
If no one objects.
I'll
then-
come in and act professionally, how's that?
Oh my God, now that would be April Fool.
That's it, they're gonna say, he's off his meds again.
No comment.
So, yeah, with no objections, we will set our next meeting then for April 1st, here, at 1 o'clock.
Great. I just wanted to add, and one thing I had forgotten to say when we were talking about the Prop 1, the new guidelines, is there's a lot more emphasis on inclusion of Native American tribes, and I'm just really thrilled that we have a Native American representative on the management group itself, and participation in all of the meetings from Lorena, and so we're really one up and ready for that one, which is great.
So, well, and after all, they're such a huge part of our community,
Yes.
and certainly have a vested interest in everything we're talking about, so I think it's wonderful they've been willing to participate with us.
They were here before we were.
I think so. Yep. I think we're the immigrants.
Yeah.
You can tell I've been watching too much CNN lately. So is there anything else before we adjourn? And we've got some cookies and coffee over here, so if you want to just stay in the mix and visit a little bit, feel free. And I gavel. We're adjourned.